All right, so hopefully the recording's going to work. And we'll just go around and I guess we'll just start with Dave. Do you want to go first?
Sure. That's a lot of pressure here. Okay, so Dave Kennedy. I am the PI of ReproNIM, the Center for Reproducible Computation. It's a NIBIB funded P41. It's a biomedical technology resource center. We're in our 6th/7th year of that now. It's hopefully a 15-year program. Our mission is to help lower the barriers to the community doing more reproducible research in the neuroimaging domain. I have a handful of mantras that you'll learn about over the course of this, but so trying to really make people more easily capture all of the provenance and all of the history and all the versioning and all the semantics that go with the neuroimaging experiment in ways that don't kill them while they're doing their research. How did I learn to, so my job, I have 3 jobs. By day, I work in a child development neuroimaging laboratory, looking at developmental disabilities, autism, ADHD, other types of things like that. By mid-afternoon, I work with NITRIC, the Neuroimaging Informatics Tools and Resources Clearinghouse, that helps to share different resources and things for the community. And then by night, I run the ReproNIM Center and try to keep the chickens all heading in the right direction. How I learned to program, well, I didn't. I am so old that Google and Stack Overflow did not exist when I learned to program. I have taken no formal classes in that. I'm so old, we had to invent our own workstations. I had to take a PDP-11 mainframe and put on a frame buffer and put on a digitizing tablet and design a workstation, from scratch, and then write all the software in Fortran 77 to interact, bring images to the screen, and interoperate, with that by human-drawn anatomic segmentation. But having done that in Fortran, I then think in Fortran and convert to C or C++ or Python or whatever else as necessary. And now, of course, I'll cheat and use Stack Overflow and Google. So that's my story. I am the most imposter of them all when it comes to virtually everything, including programming.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. So I'll go next. I'm Sukli Liu. I'm an associate professor at University of Southern California. I generally work in stroke rehabilitation. We do a lot with big data neuroimaging, and big data is of course a relative term. So for neuroimaging, it's thousands of images that we have, and Kaggle told us it was very small, so it was too small for their competitions. But that said, I've been trying to work on data science and introduce data science into the rehab field. That's a passion of mine, mostly just because I like it. And I think both fields are really exciting and have a lot to learn from each other. And how I learned to program, I was an English major in college. I double majored in kinesiology or sports medicine only because it let you take extra special PE classes, like how to teach aerobics and a class called I don't remember what it was called, but all you did was run around. And so I really liked that. And when I graduated, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I took a career test and it said that I should be a farmer or an occupational therapist. And I decided to be an occupational therapist, which has been a very fulfilling and rewarding career, and I have loved it. But obviously, none of that included any sort of programming or engineering background. And I ended up learning how to program because I joined a lab as a research assistant in neuroscience. And that lab did neuroimaging, and you needed some programming in MATLAB to use SPM in order to analyze the images. So a senior lab member gave me some of his code and said to try to modify it. And so I spent the first few years in that lab basically just taking my laptop everywhere with me and spending whatever time I had trying to figure out syntax and Googling and Stack Overflowing. And I would take my laptop to the bar to watch the Dallas Cowboys game because I didn't have TV at the time as a grad student. And I would program and watch the game. So that's how I initially learned. And I think like many people feel like there's massive gaps in my knowledge because I've only learned what I needed to know in order to do my work. But that said, it has also served me quite well so far. But I'm really excited about learning, and I'm honestly really excited to learn from all of you as well. So thank you. And I'll just call on people to facilitate this so it's not too awkward. Keith, do you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Keith Lose. I'm an associate professor at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm in the physical therapy department here, but my background's actually in psychology, and I'm accredited as a professional statistician by the American Statistical Association, which is kind of a fancy way of getting recognition for statistical training without actually having a formal degree in statistics. So if you have any questions about that, I can tell you about that process, which is pretty fun. But it relates to my training in programming, because I learned to program when I got to graduate school, and I was the TA for the statistics and the behavioral sciences labs for like all 5 years of my PhD. And the first year I got there, I was told, okay, well, we use SAS and we do these labs in SAS, so you have to learn how to program in SAS to walk the students through it. And then in the second year, I was told, well, we're switching to R because everyone is switching to R. So now you have to learn R and you have to take the students through it. So I really kind of first started learning to do programming for the purposes of statistics, but I didn't actually learn how to program all that much during my time in graduate school. I kind of survived programming while it was happening around me. I had like a class in MATLAB that I did pretty well on all the assignments, but I could never actually make anything work that I needed to use for research. I couldn't even get Python started for, I think, the first 4 years I tried to work with it. It configures a lot more easily, I think, if you're not on a Windows machine. So now I can actually like get Python started. And I think that's kind of an accomplishment. So I do most of my programming in R day to day with some specialized EEG stuff in Python. But I definitely, it was like a war of attrition when I've learned to program by survival more than anything.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. James, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'll jump right in. So I'm James Finley. I'm an associate professor at USC in the Division of Biokinesiology and Physical Therapy. Here I direct the locomotor control lab. So my research focuses on understanding issues surrounding mobility impairments, and factors that guide people or drive people to change how they walk in different scenarios. So my background is actually in engineering, and I did an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering, graduate school in biomedical engineering. So yeah, so I tell people that I'm an engineer. I also teach programming here in our program. So we created a course when I started here for our first year master's and PhD students on experimental methods for the study of human movement. So I have the pleasure of introducing everyone to MATLAB in the division. So for better or worse, you can talk to Sarah about that. She'll give you her review of that experience. So I tell all the students at the beginning of class, yes, I'm an engineer, but I actually never had a formal programming class in my life. And that's fairly common for engineers who are not computer scientists. I learned to program, there were sort of two main experiences. One was I took a course my junior year. I think it was control systems or something. And the first assignment, the instructor said, okay, solve this with MATLAB. And we said, okay. Most of us had never really used MATLAB. And so we just had to figure it out for those assignments. So that was pretty brutal, getting thrown in the deep end there. And then fortunately, I learned to enjoy programming. It's actually my favorite part of this job whenever I get to do it. So happy to talk about anything programming related with respect to that. And the second major experience for learning how to program for me was as a graduate student in my office, where I worked closely with one of my lab mates, and we were sitting next to each other, analyzing our data, and we'd figure out how to do something. We'd say, hey, check this out. Hey, that's cool. Have you thought about doing it this way? And I did that for 5 years. And that's really how I learned to program. And I think it's probably pretty common for most people. Also did a lot of printing out code that other people wrote during my first year as a PhD student and annotating it by hand. I still recommend people to do that. It's one of the best ways to understand how people structure their code. And that'll be a wrap for me.
Awesome. Thanks, James. JB?
Hi, I'm JB. I'm an associate professor at McGill University in Montreal. I do some methodology in neuroimaging, trying to find good methods to analyze data. I mean, I guess I should say I've done this kind of things in the past, especially for fMRI data. I used to program a bit in MATLAB. There's some bits of SPM that are still authored by me. I then switched to Python. It was very painful. It was at the time where NumPy didn't exist. So it was very experimental. And I was actually very attracted by the idea of having open source packages and software that could be contributed by many and reused by even more people. And so I learned a bit more Python and some aspect of programming in at Berkeley and worked with people who actually did know how to program, and I'm not saying that I am a good person for that. I just get by with just exposure, and yeah, and do I have very limited knowledge of R, and I try to avoid in a sense because it will be yet another sort of environment to put in my head. But and I do enjoy programming when I can. I've been a bit removed from that for a while. I mean, the only things that I do now are kind of stupid, Jupyter notebooks for explaining how things work, and so it's not real programming, it's not real development, but it's still some analysis, some code to analyze data. I like a bit the applied math and the biostats aspects of my work, and that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, JB. So we together are the Educational Leadership Team, or ELT, as we've abbreviated it. And next we have our awesome program manager, Coralie. So Coralie, go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Coralie. I work at USC at the NPNL as the ReproRehab manager and also as a VR programmer. I learned how to code because I have a modified major in computer science that I accidentally got because I kind of slid into it. So I would say I probably have more formal training than it sounds like the rest of you, but I still use Stack Overflow and Google, and it helps a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, Coralie. And next we'll introduce our TAs. So Joanna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Joanna. I am a finishing PhD student at the University of Melbourne. I've already started working as a postdoc, so I also wear many hats, like work like real work during the day, and then finish my thesis on the weekend, and then and then the evenings. But then I also I study computer science at a university in Germany, in addition, part-time, because like the way I learned to program is like I have an undergrad in psychology, and like it was a course in R back then, like almost 10 years ago. And I loved it so much that I started taking additional courses in computer science and like never stopped. And like the first thing that came up for me like about the question, like when you learn to program, is that I never stopped learning. Like I feel like you never stop learning. It's like you always try to refactor your code, make it better. So there's never the point where you say, I'm good at this, at least for me. But I'm also really interested in open science. So that's another passion of mine. I'm involved in a lot of communities, the OHBM community around open science and research software engineering, the Alan Turing Institute, a lot on GitHub. There's a lot of things out there that I'm really interested in. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Joanna. All right, Avinash.
Hi, everyone. My name is Avinash Parnandi. I am a researcher at NYU Langone, and I'm also an engineer at a medical device development company. So I'm an engineer by training. So I learned programming during my undergraduate. I learned to program with C for a microcontroller to build this line following robot, this tiny robot built of Lego blocks. So that's how I got into it. But since then I have some formal training during graduate school. I took a lot of courses. So that's my introduction to programming. Currently, in terms of data, I work a lot with motion capture data from stroke patients, so inertial data. So it's high dimensional data, it's a lot of data. So I try to build deep learning algorithms for it. And so yeah, so my sort of interest now is mostly on the machine learning and deep learning sides, trying to optimize these models so we can solve certain problems. So if you're interested in talking about machine learning or deep learning or signal processing, yeah, I'll be very happy to chat with you.
Awesome, thank you. Sarah?
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Kennulty. I am a PhD student at USC, and I work with Dr. Kristen Leach, do post-stroke gait rehabilitation research, currently just focusing on the effect of different rehab approaches on overall gait kinematics. As far as how I learned to program, I learned in Dr. Finley's class. So I'm a kinesiology major. I had never programmed anything before I got to USC. So I took his course and learned the basics. I just really loved it, and continued taking classes in MATLAB and R, and just using it in my data analysis, looking at the gait data and time series data, and a lot of Googling and Stack Overflow to keep learning. And I just really enjoy it, and just constantly trying to improve my code.
Awesome, thanks, Sarah. Andrew Huiman, I should say.
Yep. Hello. Hi, my name is Andrew. I am a postdoc at Arizona State University through the School of Biological Health Systems and Engineering. I graduated with my PhD from USC, so I know some of you here, or the people that you work with at least. So the kind of data that I work with is that I'm actually use online video game, which I coded to be able to predict Alzheimer's disease risk factors. I kind of got into this through my PhD, where I was first exposed to learning how to code in MATLAB. Then I was really interested in being able to reproduce this type of task that was made in the 90s. And I didn't think I'd be able to do it in MATLAB. So I instead started coding in Unity, which is a kind of free open source software that allows you to kind of code video games in C#. And that was a really interesting experience, very different from MATLAB for sure. And then when I went to my postdoc, I wanted to then be able to put the game online, realized that Unity is not great for that. So then I had to recode the entire game in JavaScript, and then also be able to develop a whole web system to be able to handle data from people playing simultaneously. So I know a lot of weird stuff in terms of coding that's not really like hardcore R and Python, although I do use R for all my stats. Yeah, it's kind of all over the place, but I'm really happy to be part of this. I really think it's a great opportunity to expand the whole programming and rehabilitation science. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Maggie?
Hi, my name is Maggie French. I am a postdoc at Johns Hopkins University in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehab. My background is as a physical therapist, and I practiced clinically for about 3 years before starting my PhD, which I was naive to the fact that that would involve learning coding. So my first semester, I was hit in the face with having to learn how to code, like I think a lot of other folks in the rehab science field. So my first exposure to coding was in my first semester when I signed up for a class that I was told I had to take. And I walked in and they were trying to teach me how to use LabVIEW, which I don't know who knows LabVIEW, but it's a coding language that's all like icon based. And I had no idea what I was doing. And then within the first couple of weeks after starting that class, a senior PhD student or postdoc actually gave me the code that we used to process our motion capture data, which was in MATLAB. And I was like, now what is this? Like, what are these coding things? What's going on? but eventually kind of learned to really enjoy coding and really realize that it's a really powerful tool. Now I primarily code in R. And I do research related to stroke recovery using electronic medical records, as well as data from wearable devices like Fitbits. And so a bulk of my work right now is using data that's managed in SQL that I then am doing most of all of my data management and processing in R.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. All right, Andrew W.
Hello, everybody. I'm also Andrew Wong. My position affiliation, I am a former master's student over at McMaster University. Current full-time job applicant and trying to figure out how to be an independent researcher. Who knew that not being affiliated anywhere, like getting ethics done, is kind of confusing. I learned to program, I guess, a really long time ago in high school. I touched on it in something called Turing, which I guess was meant to introduce us to aspects of programming, and then didn't ever touch it again until grad school through my stats and biomechanics courses, where I had to figure out MATLAB and R. And for both, I was just kind of told, like, yeah, this is your assignment, and kind of figure it out. So yeah, lots and lots of Googling. That's me.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Next is Duncan.
Hello, my name is Duncan. I'm a PhD student at the University of Delaware, and my research focuses on how stroke affects proprioception and also how to train proprioception after stroke. My story of how I got introduced to programming is pretty similar to Maggie's. Kind of came into graduate school with no experience, and then was told, like, yeah, we do a ton of programming, and here's everything, try to learn it. That didn't go very well. And then I took a couple courses that required programming, and that really forced me to sit down and actually learn it. So that's pretty much how I learned it. And then, of course, a lot of Googling and a lot of internet always helps.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Zach.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Wright. I have a very academic title as a research principal investigator, but I actually work in the industry for a startup company called Coapt. So Coapt is a startup company that came out of the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, and we manufacture control systems for myoelectric controlled upper limb prostheses using pattern recognition. So very heavy into machine learning. I've also am currently developing a lot of stuff in Python and MySQL, doing some backend development, and also Unity with our mobile app. But my background is my graduate work at the University of Illinois Chicago, and I did all my research in the robotics lab in neurorehabilitation, doing stroke robotic therapy. My earliest experience, I remember creating a program in C++, a Sudoku program. And then there's a little bit of, that was undergrad, probably in 2005. So a little bit of MATLAB sprinkled in there. But my real first experience was probably as an intern. I was working on trying to use MATLAB and Simulink, trying to control a robot. And then currently I mostly work in MATLAB. That's probably what I'm most familiar with, but I've also done a lot of work with machine learning and predictive analysis. I also have LabVIEW experience, but yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, so that's our team this year. Yay.